Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to our nerdiest thing. Tonight we have an amazing interview with Gina Maxwell. Gina Maxwell is a New York Times, USA Today, and #1 international best-selling author living in the Upper Midwest, despite her scathing hatred of snow and cold weather. I feel you on that. As a
Yeah.
lifelong romance novel addict, she began writing as another way of enjoying her love of happily ever afters. Her debut novel in 2012, Seducing Cinderella, hit the bestseller list within a month, and its release and it continues to be a fan favorite more than a decade later. When Gina's not reading, writing, or spending way too much on planners and office supplies, she enjoys hanging out with her son and daughter who've left the nest, snuggling with her fur babies, and dreaming of her someday move to someplace tropical. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Deb. I'm so glad to be here.
I swear our bios are like exactly the same. I'm in like northern Kentucky, and you don't think of Kentucky as being cold, but
No,
it's
you
it's
don't.
cold.
Does
Like
it?
because we're only an hour from Cincinnati. So we're like right there
Oh,
at the very top of Kentucky. And so it's like freezing here and I hate it. So
yeah.
maybe when we're both retired, we'll run into each other on the beach somewhere because
Yeah,
I don't plan
hopefully.
on being cold when I'm old.
No, heck no. I'm so looking forward to it.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on. I have been reading the Deviant Kings series over the last couple of years and actually had reached out to you because I was like, when's it coming out? Like, I need this in my life. And
Mhm.
that has just released. But I want to hear a little bit about writing contemporary romance and fantasy and how what's the difference between those two things and why do you like to write both?
So I funny story, I actually became a contemporary romance author by accident. Um, so I was originally trying to become, before I was published, I was writing paranormal romance, was heavily into it. And that's what I wanted to be, was a paranormal romance author.
Mhm.
My idols are Gina Showalter, Cressley Cole, Lara Adrian, Larissa Ione, like all of them. And that's the track that I wanted to put myself on. And I got a contract for that book. That was my very first contract, but I needed to be making some money in the meantime because that wasn't going to come out for a long time and all this other stuff. So the publisher said, well, why don't you just write a quick category romance? We'll get that out digitally. It'll bring stuff in for you while we work on this other project. And that was Seducing Cinderella. And so we put it out digitally. I wrote it in like 2 months. And we put it out and it was a sleeper hit. Like no one expected it to do what it did.
Doesn't that just
And
piss you off too? Because you're like, I put all my blood, sweat, and tears into this other one, and then
oh yeah,
everybody loved this over here.
3 years, 14 rewrites, hundreds of revisions. But I mean, that was me also learning how to write, right?
Of course.
So yeah, but it shot up. And so then people were like, all right, well, when's the next book? Because I wrote the secondary characters really well and they were enticing. And so that people were like,
Mhm.
well, what about these two? And I was like, okay, I guess this is, I mean, like it was a train that drove itself at that point. And so I was strictly contemporary for, well, up until 2022. When Deviant Kings came out, that was my very first foray back into the paranormal slash fantasy realm. And I've always written the urban side of that. So it's not
Mhm.
high fantasy, it's like that urban romantasy. Um, I do love both. I think there's a place for both in my heart. And, the contemporary is more character driven, which I think all of my stories are anyway.
Right.
But with the contemporary, in fact, when I was trying to write Seducing Cinderella, I said, what do they do all day? They just sit and talk to each other? Like,
That sounds
there's
awful.
no there's no world ending prophecy. There's no like there's things are exploding, no one's being kidnapped. Like they just talk and like do stuff,
Right.
you
And are
know.
cute together.
Right. So it was a learning curve in that respect, because you have to really hone in on those characters and their internal conflicts and what's keeping them apart. Why can't they be together? And all of that, which I love. I really, really love getting deep into those characters. Whereas in the fantasy realm, you get to focus a lot more on the action. For
Mhm.
instance, especially with The Vicious King, the third book in the series, there's no third act breakup because
Right.
there's so much going on with the plot and the external conflict. There is no, I mean, that book would have to be like twice its length if I added in the internal stuff. You know, Taryn's got some things that she has to overcome, but I wrote Finian as literally the perfect hero. Like he's supportive, he communicates, he, you know, like understands, and
Mhm.
the dude has no flaws.
Also, can I say that all of your guys in that series, one of the things that I really get the ick from in romantasy is whenever there is BDSM play, which there is a lot of that in your books,
Mhm.
but there's no aftercare. I really enjoy how your people take, male and females, take care of each other in their books afterwards, because so much of that culture is based off trust,
Yeah.
right? And so if there's no aftercare and they're just like, well, those rope burns look like they hurt, then
Yeah,
like, what are we doing here, right? And so
exactly.
that's something I really, really appreciate about what you write, because sometimes people will get it so right, and then it's like, and then he left, and I'm like, that's not what they would do.
Yeah.
Like, that's not
And
really a healthy relationship.
I really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot when readers comment on that to me, because that's a very important part to me. Um, there are, like you said, a lot of books where, you know, the BDSM is an element, or the kink community, and but they the consent is dubious, or the, you know, like all of these things, and which is the exact opposite of a healthy kink dynamic. And
Right.
that's what bothered me the most about a billion-dollar empire franchise that we all know about.
Mhm.
It was abusive,
Right. I actually
extremely
talked to
abusive,
someone about that just today, because she's not a big reader and she had read that series. I'm not going to say what it is because we all know
right?
what it is. And she said she didn't like that it wasn't a caring relationship. And I was like, hold on, I've got some stuff I'm gonna send you, because like, and I think that's why people struggle with kink, is because the abusive part, I think, gets more popular a lot of times because it's more edgy. And then
Right.
people are like, oh, well, they're like hurting each other. And I'm like, they're actually really not. Like,
Yeah.
and if they are, it's very consensual. They're adults. There's this kindness afterwards where they take care of each other. And I think that's honestly one of my favorite things I like about your books, is like that cinnamon roll that they become, like that ooey
Yeah.
gooey center after they were like, in charge for a little bit,
Right.
because
Yeah.
both
And
sides
whipping, and
are very
yeah.
nice. I have to ask, so your very first paranormal novel, did it ever actually get published then?
It didn't. Actually, I just had a meeting with my agent this morning, or this afternoon, and we are working on, he's taking it out on, I got the rights back. It was never actually published.
Hmm.
And I'm re-editing it and reconfiguring it, and he's taking it out on submission next month, and he knows about some deals that are, or people that are interested. So I'm
Cool.
very, very excited. It already has a cover because I was going to self-publish it this year.
Hmm.
And it's got this amazing cover that I love so, so much. It's called Desires of the Soul. And it is, I'm the worst at describing my books, but let me try and like concise it down. So basically it has to do with Christian theology,
Hmm.
and it's the war, God versus the devil in the war for mankind's souls. Who can get the most souls, right? That is the
Right.
greatest ruler.
Hmm.
And so the vampires, there's good vampires, bad vampires, which is the keepers and the unfaithful, and they are battling each other. And there's the heroine is a half angel, and there's guardian angel. Her guardian angel is like a Lara Croft Tomb Raider slash chick from the underworld, who I just
Awesome.
absolutely love. It's a lot of fights and action, and there's a prophecy and all these things. It's darker, um, but with vampires and angels, and it's the book of my
Awesome.
heart, obviously, because it was the first one I wrote all those years ago. I started it back in 2009. And yeah, so I'm very, very excited that it's going to get a home.
Oh, I can't
Soon.
wait. And my husband, we joke all the time because he reads like a lot of literary fiction. He even
Mhm.
said something the other day about like, I read vampire books. And I was like, no, you read vampire literary fiction. There's like a huge difference.
Yeah,
He'll come to me and he'll be like, have you read so and so? And I'm like, does it have a vampire in it? Is there a fae in it? Is there any kind of supernatural creature that's going to be fated mates with
yeah,
someone in this book? Otherwise, I don't
exactly.
really care. And then I've been
Exactly.
a vampire fan since Anne Rice. Like I grew up on Anne
Yes,
Rice, I'm sure just like you did. She was who got me into reading. And so vampires just have a special place in my heart. They always,
mine too.
yeah. And
Mine
there's
too.
so much symbolism and subtext with vampirism that I just really adore. And
Yeah.
so, well, I cannot wait. Will that be a series or is it a standalone?
Um, it's supposed to be a trilogy, so don't quote me on that, but I think we're selling it as a trilogy as well. So
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll keep my eye open for it for sure.
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
wait. Okay, so is there being a writer since 2009, is there a book or a specific author that really made you want to begin writing?
hmm Gina Showalter's Lords of the Underworld,
Hmm.
number 5, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, The Darkest Passion. As I look back on my bookshelf, that was the book I had at the time. I lived a couple blocks from the library, and I was like walking to the library like every other day and just bringing home like tons of books. And
We
that's
might
where
be soulmates. So I used to do that too, and my parents would be like, "Are you okay?" And now I'm like, "Just let the girl read. Like she's
right.
fine."
Exactly, exactly. And libraries, that's why I love libraries so much, because at the time I didn't have the money to buy books.
Hmm.
And so like that was my escape. My kids were finally in school full time, and I could just like finally focus, because I'm an all or nothing person. So I had to give up reading while they were little, because it was like, Mommy, I'm hungry. I'm like, one more chapter.
Right. Yeah. You'll eat when you eat after these
Right,
people end
exactly.
up having sex. I need to get to it. Come on.
Exactly. The enemies are becoming lovers. Leave me alone.
Right.
But so I was voraciously reading her Lords of the Underworld series at the time, and that book, I closed the last page. I was laying in bed at night, and I was like, wow, I am so invested in these characters, and they don't exist. They can't exist. There is no Pandora's box demons that are inside
Hmm.
super sexy men on the this mountain in Budapest. So like it it was one of those awe-inspiring moments, that you have in life a few times. And I just kind of laid there and I started thinking, well, if I was going to put two characters together, who would I put together? And that's where I came up with Dominic and Angelica, who they were, friends from the time they were 5, and he's in love with her. She doesn't know it. He turns into a vampire, she's a half angel, he had no idea. Like I just started putting all of these like details in my head, and I was doing it like while I was washing the dishes and while I'm taking care of the kids, like all of this is going on. And then I just was like, oh my gosh, if I don't write some of this stuff down, I'm going to forget it.
Hmm.
And then I thought, all right, so let's write a book, big deal. I'll read it, my friends, maybe some friends will read it, whatever. And the more I wrote, the more invested I, of course, became in their story. And then one day I thought, maybe I should try to get published. What's the worst that can happen? They say
Right.
no, big
Right.
deal. I'm no worse off than I am now, which is writing a book just for myself.
Hmm.
So that's when I Googled how to write fiction well. And I'm not kidding. I
I'm
literally
glad
did.
there's articles out there for it,
Oh
right?
my God, so much. And I did my hyper focus ADHD stuff, and I went down the rabbit hole of how to write fiction and romance, and I read articles and blogs and books, and then I typed in how to get published or how to get a literary agent, and went down that path and taught myself that. And that was big when blogging was a thing, like
Hmm.
there was a writing blogging community. And so I was, of course, blogging my journey to publication and putting, chapters in there, and we were all giving each other feedback. And so that's how I got critique partners. And then, yeah, 3 years, 30 rejections, um, 14 complete rewrites, hundreds of
Wow.
revisions, and I finally got a contract.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. Like
Thank
that.
you.
And it's like a love letter to yourself, which I really adore because you're like, I wrote what I wanted to write. And,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring this forward instead of someone else telling me how to do this. I'm sure
Yeah.
though, that I mean, and here's the thing that I love now, even about like the blog world, because of course we all had a blog back then.
Mhm.
But now on Instagram is just like the love that authors give each other, and how they'll connect and help each other out, and introduce them to the right agent or to the right
Yes.
publisher. And I find that world so fascinating and so exciting. It's a really fun
We're
place to
a
be.
very, especially Romance Landia, we're a very supportive group. Like there's bad apples, obviously. There's
Right.
always in any group. But I think by and large, Romance Landia is one of the few places in the world where women just lift other women up.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I'm so here for
I
it.
think it's because we're all really excited about being comfortable with our sexuality, and no one's telling us we're not supposed to be, or that it's dirty, or
Yep,
that whatever kink we like is not okay. I think they're like, "Oh yeah, girl, like go get it. Like do what you want to
absolutely.
write what you want to write." And that's really what I have loved about our podcast. We say all the time, we are sex and body positive. If you don't like that, this is not the right podcast for you,
That's
because
right.
we say the word dick all the time and we talk about how much we enjoy sex. And my husband's our editor, and sometimes he'll be like, "Do you want to talk about this?" He's like, "I had no idea." And I'm like,
Absolutely.
"Yes, let's talk about it
Yeah.
upstairs right now."
Yeah.
So speaking of romance, do you have a least favorite romance trope to read? And then what's your favorite trope to write?
My least favorite one to read are the pregnancy slash single parent ones, only
Mhm.
because I like my books on the senior side and they've always got to get rid of the kid. You know what I mean? Like it's not that
Right.
I won't read them or I haven't loved books with small children and things of that nature. It's just, it's my least favorite because there's always like that kid around, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, do something with the kids so we can get down to business. But so that would be my least favorite. And then my favorite to write, I guess would be, I think there's I should check sometime, but I think every single book I've ever written has forced proximity.
I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm like,
I
"Yeah,
really think, I
yep,
really think there is because I love it when they can't get away from each other.
right,
Like they're, whether they both want each other or they're denying the fact that they want each other or only one of them does and the other one's clueless. It's too delicious for them to have to be together all
right,
the time.
right."
So that is, I think, like just a common theme. Other than that, if we're gonna say that one is a baseline for me, I love Older Brother's Best Friend.
That one has really grown on me. And I'll tell you why it didn't. I had a brother who was 3 years older than me growing up, and
Ah,
all of my friends thought he was cute. And I was like, "You're not good enough for my brother. Back the
yeah,
fuck off. He is
right.
mine, not yours." No, none of my friends were good enough to date him, and they never did, because I would have probably thrown some bows around if they had. I would have not been okay with that. But
Yeah,
now, now that we're both in our 40s, I'm like, yeah, now I can read. Now I can read
yeah,
this one.
yeah.
No problem at all. So, whenever you write, because I know that you're writing full time, is there any type of rituals that you have that are a little bit more unhinged, or are you a get up and write and like schedule your day out type of person?
I have no rituals, no schedules. I am severely ADHD. I go for weeks and sometimes months without writing at all. Usually after I've finished a book. So I just finished
Mhm.
Vicious. I haven't been writing since. I'm going to start working on Dots tomorrow, which is pretty quickly for me because usually I burn myself out
Right.
because ADHD, so I procrastinate and I leave myself this impossible window of time to do the impossible work. And so I pull 12, 14-hour days for weeks at a time. And then I burn myself out and then I need like weeks and sometimes months to recover from that.
Of
Um,
course.
it's it's a bad habit that I picked up from dealing with difficult publisher expectations,
Right.
shall we say.
Especially
That
in
I'm
romance, they want you to like get that stuff out.
it's it's very, very difficult because yeah, it's that is a whole other can of worms that we can go into another time, but it's with the self-publishing industry. We've cannibalized ourselves and
Right.
um we've gotten to the point where the readers expect us to pump these things out over and over again. And it's because we've conditioned them to expect that.
Right.
So, but yeah, I had some difficult publishing expectations on me and stuff like that, and not from readers, from houses. And I no longer have those. So I'm hoping one of the goals that my agent and I have moving forward, he's a new agent, not my previous one, is to put me in situations where that's not the
Right.
case, where I'm
Right.
not being forced to burn myself out. So hopefully I will get into some kind of a routine. Things that I always do is I do writing sprints with my three best friends, who are Kristen Cast, Cindy Madsen, and Rebecca Yaros.
Hmm.
So we are always doing 30-minute writing sprints, which helps keep us accountable.
You get online together and then just write together, or how does that work?
We just do it via text.
Hmm.
So we'll say we send random emojis as our go. So it's funny because then our favorite emoji section looks way messed up because we're sending like, just we'll be like, all right, let's go. And then each of us sends a random emoji. And then we one of us is always Cindy's always the timekeeper. And when Cindy's not sprinting, then it falls to me, which I'm about 50-50 on, of remembering to set the timer.
It's not
Rebecca's
bad though if
last.
you keep writing, right? Like like, no, I'm in the zone. Like, let's keep going.
Yeah, so 30 minutes check in, we'll say time, we'll say how many pages or how many words, or had to fix a plot hole, whatever. Sometimes we'll chit chat a little bit and then we'll keep going. So
That's awesome. And again, it's great that you have that accountability too. I think we all need that for sure.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about Deviant Kings. I know that you have had a couple of different series, much like it, where they're written as standalones, but they're all interconnected.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your choice to do that instead of just doing like a long, continuous story. Because, I mean, honestly, Deviant Kings to me does read like a long, continuous story, but you could read them as standalones for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started writing, like I said, way back when, I was reading Gina and Cressley and Lara, and those were all interconnected standalones, which
Hmm.
means each book is a new couple, but there's like an overarching plot or
Right.
whatever. Um, so that was what I started writing with when I was writing Desires of the Soul. It was 3 books, different couples, same kind of overarching plot. But then when I got into contemporary romance, there's no real overarching plot, so like that part went away for me, and it was just the different couples, right?
Hmm.
But same world. So for instance, the very first contemporary romance series that I wrote was Fighting for Love, which is about MMA fighters. And it's, the main couple in book 1, and then the best friend and the sister in book 2. And, so you get those characters all the way through, but it's different couples. Um, so that's kind of how all of my books were up until the Deviant Kings. And now, because again, like I said, it's the romantasy, you've got all of that external stuff. So now I've got the overarching plot again for the first
Hmm.
time.
Right.
So yes, you can read these as standalones. In fact, I had the Vicious King. I hired a beta reader, an editor, to do a beta analysis of the Vicious King, because I wanted to make sure, and she had not read the first 2 books.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was a really good test for me, because the further you get into a series like that, the harder it is to like recap without info dumping. Like
Hmm.
Rebecca and I always joke, like, last time on Fourth Wing, last time
I
on The Dark
wish
King,
sometimes though, because there is a
right?
fantasy writer I adore, and this person will pick up the next book in the same scene. And I'm like, but I don't remember what happened for the 700 pages before that.
Yeah.
I need seriously. And Emily Rath does that in her little pucking around. Sometimes it'll say previously on, don't forget
Does she?
they
Oh my
fucked in
God, I would
Seattle, and
love
that's how
doing
they
that.
yeah, it would be so helpful. We need to make that a normal thing,
We
especially
do
in
need to
fantasy.
normalize that. Let's do that, because damn, would that be so much easier than trying to expertly weave in without info dumping. And you're like, okay, well, I tell them this much here and then
Right.
or this much and then you know what I mean? So it's really really hard the further you get into a series. But yeah, so the Deviant Kings, it can be read, they each can be read as standalones, but because of that overarching plot and because I include the other characters, like the more the family
Mhm.
grows, the more you know that those people are in those books. So for instance, when my beta reader was reading Vicious King, and it was the first time that you saw the brothers
Right.
come into the story, um, they had this little bit of banter. And had you known them from the previous two books, you would have known that they were just like giving each other shit.
Right.
But because she hadn't read that, she's like, oh, this isn't the dynamic I expected. I didn't think they would be so mean. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
no,
they're
they're
just
not.
kidding around. They're being
Oh,
brothers.
never
Yeah.
mind, I'll change that. Yeah, I did kind of like smooth it out because it without knowing those personalities, it did sound rather harsh.
You know,
So
that's funny because I think there's a part in that book where you even one of the characters says like they're being awful to each other, and someone else says, "Oh no, that's brotherly banter" or something like that. Now it's all clicking in as to why
yeah.
you did that. So, can you tell a little bit of to our listeners what they can expect from this new book, The Vicious King, and you know what to be looking for? I mean, because I've read it, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I'd
Yeah.
love to hear it from you.
The Vicious King. So it's the third and final book in the Deviant Kings series. So in the first couple of books, we've been dealing with there's three brothers, and this is the youngest brother's book. And in the first two, his brothers are kings and abdicate and kings and stuff like that. And they're in Vegas, so they are the Dark Fae, and they were exiled from Fairy, the realm, the fairy realm, hundreds of years ago. And now they rule Vegas. They were the ones that created Vegas. And you'll notice that
Which I love.
I never call it Las Vegas. I just call it Vegas throughout the whole
Mhm.
thing. So they created it, and it's such a symbolic, like it just lines up with the Dark Fae, right? The Dark Fae are these deviant, like sexy, sensual, sinful creatures. And what is Vegas except that?
Right.
Like,
And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
right,
Right.
right. And they were even like, yeah, it was the most brilliant marketing thing we ever came up with, you know? And it's just
Yeah.
it's fun to play on that stuff. Anyway, so this is Finian's story, and in the beginning, he is rescuing the Lord of the Vampires' sister, who has been captured by the big bad who goes across the whole series. And he rescues her. She's not actually a vampire. She's actually an estranged princess from Fairy who has been living in the human realm for hundreds of years. And they have to in order to thwart the big revenge that the bad guy, the Light King, is going to attempt on Fairy. He's going to try and destroy Fairy and kill her mother, and take the power.
Mhm.
um Finian and Taryn have to go on this scavenger hunt through Vegas, which I will never do again. Yeah,
That was
yeah.
actually so I grew up in Vegas, Gina.
Me
I lived there till
too.
I was 9. And then I went back for the first time last month. And I gotta say, growing up there, I said I'd never go back. And I went back
Mhm.
last month and I went for free. I would go for free again, but
Yeah,
I'm like, it's fine. Like, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
I know some people really, really love it. But your details and some of the things, I was like, oh yeah, that is there. Oh yeah, she did do that. And so, did you go to Vegas and like scope stuff
No.
out, or did you just do research online?
Research online. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I've been to Vegas before, maybe 3 or 4 times, but it's not my favorite place either. I enjoy the food and people watching, but other
Mhm.
than that, it's not. Oh, and the shows, but other than that, it's not my jam. But yeah, the scavenger hunt was very difficult to write, extremely difficult, because I had to incorporate real Vegas locations, but those Vegas locations, like the popular ones, they were built in the 90s and the early
Right.
2000s.
And
Like,
they're ever changing, right?
yeah. And so I had to like set this up so that, you know, his grandmother was sending him on this scavenger hunt from 100 years earlier and
Mhm.
with things that didn't exist. Luckily, she's a seer, so it makes sense. But yeah, so it was, so they go on this scavenger hunt and throughout Vegas, to find these clues that will lead them to the Spear of Asal, which is the weapon that has the power to kill the one true queen. And so they do that, and it slips through their fingers, and then they have to cross into fairy. So this is the first book and only book in the series where we actually cross into from Vegas into fairy. And so you get to see what the fairy realm looks like and go to the summer palace and experience all of that as well, which was really fun for me.
Do you think there will be more? Are there going to be any kind of offshoots in this series? Because I feel like you set a lot up. And I have some
Did.
questions offline for you. Actually, I'm not going to put them in the episode because they're very spoilerly, but I was like, what about this? What about this? But in a good way. It kept
Yeah,
me I wasn't disappointed because I wanted more. I was excited because I wanted more. Does that make
right.
sense? You
Yes.
really left me on the edge of like feeling really, really good. But then I was like, hold on, I need some more of this.
Yeah.
So what's the
So
plan?
the big question that I get or comment in all the reviews is Dimitri's story. Dimitri
Hmm.
is the vampire lord.
Oh, he's so
He's,
hot. I don't
he's
know what it is about him.
Russian.
He's so hot.
He is. He's hot, and his sense of humor is so dry, and he's the most extreme BDSM out of all of them because he's a master and a sadist. So
Hmm.
um so he would be pretty hardcore to write, and my daughter will disown me if I don't write a full book for him. So um I I have a feeling I will have to endeavor that at some point in the near future. And then also the Wolf twins. I would love to write a book for them.
Yeah, that would be really fun too.
One book, both brothers, one one female.
Okay, so a why choose type of thing almost.
Uh-huh.
Kind of. No, just one female. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got so much to look forward to with your catalog coming up. No pressure though, seriously.
Right.
Take your time. Okay, so one thing we always do with our authors is a nerdy and dirty speed round, and that's where we ask you real off the cuff questions, and we just want the first thing that pops into your mind. Okay, are
Got
you
it.
ready?
Yeah.
What is your favorite guilty pleasure food?
See, I don't like the term guilty pleasure because I feel like every pleasure should be guilt free. But
That's a good
I
point.
guess I guess tiramisu is my favorite dessert. Does that count?
Oh, I love tiramisu.
Yeah.
Who is your celebrity crush?
Jason Momoa.
Oh yeah. What TV show or movie do you quote most often?
It would either be Monty Python and the Holy Grail or The Sweetest Thing.
I just watched The Sweetest Thing like 2 weeks ago with my daughter, and she loved it. It stands up. It
It's
holds up. It
it
really
does
does.
hold up. That is
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
So funny. Do you believe in supernatural creatures?
No.
So my other question was, have you ever had a ghostly encounter, which I'm assuming is also no then. Or do you
Well, no, I
ghosts
feel
and
like
supernatural are
okay, so
different?
I feel like supernatural creatures is more like the vampires, the werewolves, those kinds of things. I do believe in ghosts, totally. Ghosts and spirits, yes.
Have you ever had any kind of encounters with the
I
spirit?
have. I used to live in a house where I swear the owner that had built it back in the 70s haunted it. And it wasn't a scary haunting though, but he was really freaking annoying. Every time I would put in a light bulb, it would last a couple of days and then he'd kick it out. And there was one specific time where I was on the phone with someone. I was in my living room. It was at night. The kids were in bed. And I was looking at my TV, even though it wasn't on, like, because you're looking straight ahead. And I had this glass, this blue, cobalt blue glass bowl on top of it because this was back when TVs had a shelf on top
Right,
because it
right.
was not a flat screen, and there was potpourri in it, and it was sitting on top, and all of a sudden whew, it just flew off and shattered, and I was like, oh my.
You're like, I didn't even do anything. And maybe he wanted you to leave the room so he could like go to sleep or something.
I don't know. I was mad. There was such a mess. I was like, you couldn't have just like tossed a pillow, something that wasn't gonna, yeah. So
Yeah.
those are my encounters.
Okay. So, final question in this round is what is the most favorite item of yours in your house?
Favorite item in my
Mhm.
house?
Mhm.
Inorganic,
Whatever.
because my cats are my favorite.
Okay. How many cats
Yep.
do you have?
I have four.
What are their names?
Um, Elliot Reed is the oldest and the biggest. That's from Scrubs, that name.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have, and they are actually 2 years old today.
Oh,
So I
awesome.
have the mama, which is Phantom. And when I got her 2 years ago, she was 7 months old and this teeny tiny little thing. And I rescued her from a farm that had like dozens of feral cats.
Oh, wow.
And I took her to her first vet appointment and they said, she's a month pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I
So you had a
wanted two
teenage
cats.
pregnancy.
And so I was like, okay, here we go. And she had 3 kittens. And 2 years ago today, I was in a Polycon. I was in DC with my daughter at a Polycon. And my sister was coming by to check on her. And she passed my office here. I had her in my office, like closed off from Elliot.
Mm-hmm.
And because we knew that she was going to go into birth any day. And Trisha came around and my office is all windows and she saw the very first one born on the rug and she's like, oh my God. So
Oh
then
my
she
gosh.
FaceTimed me and Alyssa and I got to watch the birth of the other ones.
Oh, that
Yeah.
is so sweet.
So the other two are Freya and Fenrir, which are both Norse gods. And
Right.
then the third one is Sif, but I gave her to my sister took her. So her husband did a poll at work and said, how many cats would a girl have to have for you to not date her? And everybody said 5. So apparently I needed to get rid of one.
Well, right now it's pretty cool to be a crazy cat lady, I have to say,
Right?
in the current culture.
Absolutely.
So you own that for sure.
I do.
So tell me a little bit about where you like your readers to connect with you.
So the place where I say it's where my readers become my friends is in the Maxwell Mob on Facebook. You can just search for the Maxwell Mob and it'll come up. It's got like a white background with a purple Maxwell Mob thing on it. And that's where I hang out the most.
Mhm.
I haven't been in there as often as I would like because of the deadline recently, but I'm going to be getting back in there. And it's really just a place where my readers can put up dirty jokes and pictures of hot men and laugh. And we're super supportive. Anytime anyone has needed something, we answer the call and yeah, we have a lot of fun in there.
I love that. I don't know if I'm a part of that. I'm gonna have to go check it out. Where
Definitely.
do you prefer your readers to purchase your books? Do you like them to go to like the Zon or to go straight through you through the website or what's best for you?
So I don't have an online site yet. I'm working on it. Where I'm in the process of getting it up. So right now it's Amazon, but I will be selling signed copies and book plates. Also probably some cool friendship bracelets that I've made for a Polycon and things like that. I've got those. And maybe some swaggy things and stuff like that. So that will be coming up hopefully within the next month
Okay,
by the
cool.
end of summer. So I suggest signing up for the newsletter because that's where, or in the Maxwell Mob, those two places are the places that always get my news, first.
First. Okay, perfect. So, I saw you at a Polycon this year, but what other events do you have coming up for the rest of 24 and into 25?
I have no more this year. 2025, I have, as of right now, it's a Polycon in April, Windy in the City in Chicago in May,
Mm-hmm.
and the end of June is it Charlotte, Georgia? Carolina, it's somewhere in Georgia. Starts with a C. I've never heard of it before, but it's somewhere in Georgia. Shoot. I'm
We'll put it
being
in the show notes for the listeners
yeah,
so
I'm
they can
being such
find
a
you.
bad author right now because I can't remember what it's called. But yeah,
There's
there's
a lot of
one.
conventions right now. They all kind of start running together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they're
a
all
little
really
worried
fantastic.
that all 3 of them are bing bang boom. Because holy crap. But we're gonna try it. We're gonna give it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll make it. You'll just sleep whenever you get home.
That's right.
So the way we always end our podcast is by talking about our nerdiest thing of the week. It does not have to be book related. It's something just super nerdy that you've done. And it doesn't, for you, it doesn't have to be the week, but maybe even for like the last month of something where you're like, I cannot believe I was such a nerd about that. So we'd love to hear what yours is.
Oh man, that's gonna be a tough one. I don't think I'm all that nerdy. I mean, except when it comes to books, but even then, I read strictly romance. So like, you know what I mean? We're not considered nerds in the romance genre. It's more,
I don't know. I think we're pretty nerdy when we sit down and read a book in 5 hours, right? Because we're
oh
so
yeah,
into
that's
that's
for
pretty
sure.
nerdy, right?
The one of the things that I did just recently, I don't know how nerdy it is, but I decided to try a new hobby and it's paint by numbers.
People love that.
I loved it so much. So I needed something to do while watching TV or listening to an audiobook because ADHD, and I'm like, I need to be doing something
Mhm.
more than one thing at a time. And so I tried it. Like it came up in like one of my Facebook ad things, and I was like, oh, and then of course, the more you scroll, the more they're like, paint by numbers.
Right.
So I got one and I just finished my very first one 2 nights ago and I absolutely love it. It's a sugar skull. It's this giant sugar skull with roses around it, pink and like
Cool.
roses. And you can check it out on I put it on my Instagram and my Facebook. And when I opened it up, I was so intimidated because you look at this canvas and it's just tiny little numbers everywhere. I mean, tiny.
Right.
It looks like there's just a bunch of ants on this paper. And I was like, holy crap. And my daughter was there when I opened it up and she's like, just start, mom. Just pick a number and just start. And that's what I did. And I just, once you get real close to it and you look at you pick out one number and you just
Mhm.
focus on that one number, um, it kind of like narrows it down for you and it becomes less intimidating. And then when you back, and then it also looks like a hot freaking mess.
Right.
Like you don't have to stay in the lines, I learned, because like you're up close and you're like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And then you go like this and you're like, oh, that looks good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And when you finish it, you can't tell it's a paint by number. It looks like a freaking painting. And
So are you going to frame it and put it up?
it's framed. Oh yeah. I have it in my living
Awesome.
room.
Okay, so what are you painting next? Have you already found another one?
Yes. I found some that are sexy. There's one where you see a dude's hand pulling her tank top down and she's like over him. And I was like, that's my next
I
one.
think I need
And then
that
there's
one.
like, yeah, there's some sexy ones that I found. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna do those next. So
Yeah, I think that sounds really great, actually.
yeah.
You'll have to send me the link to that one because I have one, like a big one that's like a real abstract girl that I've actually never started on. I got it for my birthday a couple of years ago for the same exact reason. I like to always
Mhm.
kind of have something in my hands, and I haven't started it. And even the other day, my daughter was like, "Can I do this?" And I was like, "No, it's mine. You can't.
Right.
It's mine. I'm going to get to it one of these years."
When I want to, that's
Right,
right.
exactly, and it's
Yeah.
on the easel and it's, like, ready to go, but
Uh-huh.
more it's strictly decoration right now instead of actually decoration, right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was so
Thank
lovely
you,
talking
Deb.
to you, and I can't wait to read what comes out next and this paranormal book that's going to come out because that really, really is my jam, and I just really appreciate you, and thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. I absolutely had a blast talking with you, Deb. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.